We are live with our longevity series. This is actually going to be, I think, topic number three. Last week we talked about teeth and longevity. Before that, we talked about, oh man, I'm already drawing a blank. I think we took a break, but we started our anti-aging series on the cellular level and talking about autophagy, how our cells have the power to cleanse, almost hit a reset button. That was our first of this session and of this series. And we're going to continue this series on longevity because I don't know about you, but I want to live as long as possible. I feel blessed to be alive every day. I do realize, of course, ultimately it's God that's in control. We should always acknowledge that. No day is ever promised, right? We only have today, but tomorrow is never promised. But even that being said, I firmly believe that God has given us many ways, natural ways to prolong our life and make sure not only that our life is as lived till the end of our God-given days, but lived to its fullest, right? Who wants to be old and decrepit or um, have dysfunction and not be able to do the things you love, right? Or go the places you want to go, have their memory failing. There's a lot that we can do to prolong aging and to slow aging down. So the purpose of our last two sessions and our future sessions would be to teach us how to slow aging down. And this is the anti-aging series, okay? So if you are interested in learning how to live longer as well as healthier, then definitely keep watching every Monday at 7 p.m. So those of you who are watching and are regular viewers of our channel, we always ask that you let us know you're here. If you're new to the channel, introduce yourself. Let us know where you're watching from. We really appreciate that. It's always funner when we're doing these lives and we have interaction. So if you have questions as we go through this topic, zombie cells. All right, this is a really cool one, especially in I guess the spirit of Halloween or whatever. But the zombie cells. There's how many of you guys know that there are actually cells in your body that people actually are calling zombie cells, and we're going to describe what they are and why they're called zombie cells. But I'm just curious if anyone's ever heard of them. The more scientific name is senescent cells, senescence. Senescence actually comes from the Latin senex, which means growing old. Okay, and first off, let me make sure I have my slides because I always like to have the research behind our educational topic. What studies are showing, and so we could see that everything we share on this channel is evidence based. So give me a second to pull that up. I actually was running a little bit behind today, so usually I'm more prepared than this. But give me a moment to make sure we have our slides up. All right. And as we're doing that, yeah, as again, just let us know in your chat you're watching, who's here and not too shy to say hello. Let Lewis know he's not on this live by himself. And the question I'm asking is, anyone ever heard of zombie cells? All right, so just give me a second to download this first. I believe I have to do it as a PDF. Or JPEG. Yep. We'll download. I think it's always easier to do a downloaded slides instead of sharing my screen. All right, let's do it like this. All right, so we're just going to do a quick test. Appreciate your patience here. My computer's acting a little slow today. All right. All right, let's see if this works. I'm going to go back. All right, bear with me, people. Um, almost through. Let's see, I think I have to do it as a PDF. All right. Okay, we're almost cooking. All right. Great. I think we got it. We may yep, okay. I thought I had to do without the slides today. Yes, we got it. All right, awesome. We're cooking. Appreciate your patience there. All right. So we're not just yet ready to present, but when we are, we're going to make sure to have the slides ready. All right. So zombie cells. I'm guessing nobody knows what it is because no one said anything in the chat. Hello, Audrey. Thanks for watching. Zombie cells. So basically what you would understand about cells is that they divide, right? That's how they prolong your life. When a cell is damaged or when it's time, a certain time or size, it actually splits in two, right? And it continues its life cycle as a new cell. There's something called a Hayflick limit. So basically what this is that an understanding that we have that cells don't go on dividing forever, right? In other words, cells have an expiration date. Every cell except for stem cells in our body have a certain number of divisions before they stop dividing. They almost go into retirement. Okay, so this is known as a Hayflick limit. There's on average about 50 divisions before a cell goes into what's called retirement or senescence. It's when the cell is no longer functioning. It's the cell saying, you know what, I've reached my limit of divisions. I'm no longer being divided. I am done. I'm exiting the life cycle of your body. So you can imagine that if an individual is no longer producing, right? It's no longer functioning, right? It's almost like he's dead. That's what the cell is. The cell is essentially a dead cell. Or now, normally, of course, whenever we're young and vital and not experiencing the degeneration that comes with age, whenever these cells build up, they are cleared by the immune system. So young, healthy individuals, as senescent cells build up, these cells are cleared by the immune system, right? Because there's no purpose. They don't serve a purpose anymore. But as we get older, unfortunately, right? And I just celebrated my 39th birthday. I'm getting old. I'm close to 40, guys. But as we get older, unfortunately, these cells start to pile up because of two reasons. One, the immune system isn't working as well, right? As we get older, we've talked about this in other lives. Your immune system doesn't function optimally, so it's not it's not as good at clearing these senescent cells. And number two, of course, as we age, the number of cells going into senescence goes up, right? So you can imagine all these cells going into retirement, and the immune system is going awry. Another thing that's actually important to note is that there's a term called SASP inflammation. It's called senescence associated secretory phenotype inflammation. It's whenever the cell is retiring or reached the end of its life cycle, it sends out a marker for inflammation or a signal to be destructed, to self-destruct. These markers of inflammation are happening all over the body. So now you're having inflammation all over the body as these senescence cells are sending out signals, right, to activate the immune system. We know acute inflammation is good, but chronic inflammation is not good, right? How many of you guys know that chronic inflammation is not good, right? The best way to describe chronic inflammation is a construction worker being in your house 24/7, right? 24 hours, 7 days a week, breaking down walls and destroying things that don't need to be destroyed, right? Just imagine the chaos of having a construction crew all day in your house. So chronic inflammation is kind of like that, right? It's tearing down and causing damage all day long. So as we get older, these zombie cells or senescent cells are increasing. Inflammation is increasing as well. So, is there anything that we can do to reverse this? Well, there are things that are quite unnatural that are being done, and I want to turn to our slide to kind of share some of these things. So, Well, first off, let's talk about the effects of senescence. There are a few: herniated discs, spinal curvature, loss of muscle mass, kidney disease, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, and even cancer. And what's interesting, why I say even cancer, is because senescence, cells going into senescence or retiring, is basically a way to protect you from developing cancer cells, because the longer a cell lives, the more likely its DNA can be damaged. The more its DNA is damaged, the more likely it's able to, it is to transition into a cancer cell, becoming a cancer cell. And so we have a natural cutoff to its life cycle to avoid it becoming cancerous. But as we get older, and we pile up inflammation because of the buildup of these zombie cells, right? This inflammation can actually feed cancer growth. So senescence is not good for many reasons, right? Even the very reason it exists, for cancer development. So there's one thing we can do. We can go through blood transfusions. I don't know if you guys remember this guy. I think his name is John. Gosh, I'm running a blank. I don't know if you're familiar with the name. Let me know in the chat. But the documentary is called "Don't Die" on Netflix. And this guy is a multimillionaire who is trying to see if he could live forever, right? A praiseworthy goal. But what's interesting is that he has a lot of things that he does to promote longevity. One of those is blood transfusions. The documentary actually mentions that this guy gets blood transfusions from his younger son. Now, what's crazy, if that's not crazy enough, right, to get the blood transfusions from someone as younger than you to live longer, I think it's crazier that there's actually science behind this. There's actually studies that show that blood transfusions, the older getting blood from the younger, actually does help promote longevity and slow down aging. There's a series of experiments with lab animals where they actually fuse them together so that they could share a circulatory system. And pairing an old rat with a young rat causes the old rat to live longer, to actually improve its cognition and function, right? To gain muscle mass from getting blood from this younger rat. And vice versa, when the younger rat receiving the blood from the older rat actually starts to deaccelerate, so starts to age faster because of the blood it's being received from the old rat. So I think this is wild to me, to think about the old feeding on the young, and young, dying from being connected to the old. But there's actually experiments that show that when you get blood from a younger source, the blood is revitalized. What's interesting is that you may think, okay, is it because there's some kind of revitalizing factor in youth, like a vampire effect? Really, it's really because the blood, or the blood of the elder, is being diluted. Okay. And one reason why we know senescent cells are what's causing aging, or one of the factors that causes aging, is because in experiments, if you take just a few senescent cells and put them inside a model rodent, right, the rodent starts to age very fast. So we know it's the senescent cells. We know it's the zombie cells that are circling through our system. So I don't know about you. I'm not really down with feeding on the young blood, right? I'm not a vampire. That's not something I want to do. So let's talk briefly for the next few moments on natural ways to deal with these zombie cells, these senescent cells in our body. And because I believe that there's always things in nature that God has given us to turn to make sure our body temple is at top notch, right? And to really prolong our life, but also to slow aging. And there are natural things we can do. We talk about a lot in this channel. Okay, this is a study on blood dilution before I go into the natural ways. So patients with moderate Alzheimer's randomized to blood dilution experienced about 60% less cognitive function and decline over a period of 14 months compared to placebo. That's just diluting their blood. So we know it's not just, some kind of revitalizing factor from young blood, but the actual dilution of blood, which actually makes sense too, because the Bible says that the life of the body is in the blood, right? So we need to know what it takes to keep our blood healthy, right? And there are ways to do this naturally. Um, One of these is calorie restriction, right? So, and I hope you guys can see this here on this graph. This actually was a graph that compared three groups of people. Okay, there's actually a society called the Calorie Restriction Society. Okay, and what they do is restrict their calories over long periods of time and reap the benefits. So those of you who's actually intermittent fasting, I don't know if who those of you guys are watching do practice intermittent fasting, but intermittent fasting is a great way to make sure you're restricting calories day to day. The Calorie Restriction Society in this group, they were aged and on average about 62 years old, and had been restricting about 30% of their caloric intake for 10 years. Okay. They are represented by the orange here. All right. So you're taking 62-year-olds who have been restricting calories for about 10 years, 30% calorie restriction. And this is the amount. This height right here is the amount of senescent markers of senescence in their blood. Okay, so I don't know if they took samples of the blood or they biopsy them. I think they might have taken samples of the blood and they tested it for markers of senescence. And this was a level of senescence for a 62-year-old who had been restricting calories for 10 years. This right here, the darker blue, is another group of 62-year-olds, on average 62-year-olds, who had been eating a standard diet, a normal, typical Western diet. And this is the difference. See the difference between markers of senescence? They had quite more than twice the amount of senescent markers or zombie cells in their blood compared to the group that had restricted calories. If you're curious about this group right here, this group is actually a group of an average age, or I believe it was around 24 years old, well, of a Western diet. So of course, the 24-year-old has the lowest markers of senescence or zombie cells, but they're pretty close to the 62-year-olds. That's just think about it. The 62-year-olds had markers of senescence comparable to a 24-year-old. So team calorie restriction, if you guys are doing intermittent fasting, good job. That's a good way to clear zombie cells, right? What else can we do? One thing we always preach on this channel is resistance training, the importance of making sure we are building lean muscle. But I believe exercise in general, whatever it is you're doing, can be very beneficial for helping us clear these zombie cells. All right. So this is an experiment, very simple, where they compared biopsying their muscles, the senescent cells before and after resistance training. So they took a young group, and they had them do 6 sets of 4 squat reps. Before they did the exercise, they checked their senescent cells, and they checked it after 48 hours after doing the exercise, 6 sets of 4 squat reps. I believe it was at about 70% of their body weight, which is a pretty good workout. After 48 hours of doing this workout, the amount of senescent cells in their muscles decreased by 48%. That's crazy. 1% for every hour, right? So what are you doing, guys? Are you guys exercising? Are you building these lean muscles? What's interesting is the group that had less protein prior to the exercise actually decreased their senescent cells in their muscles by 73%, right? So another reason why we should be holistic in our approach and not emphasizing just one macronutrient like protein. So we know calorie restriction can reduce zombie cell burden. We know exercise can do it. What else can we do? And we're almost through. All right. So we know that quercetin, I believe it's pronounced, quercetin is another very well-known food component as a polyphenol found in many, many foods, right? Very high and concentrated in these specific foods, though. Apples, buckwheat, capers, and onions, right? So these are foods that you could start making sure you're eating a lot of, because they can reduce senescent cells and clear them. So they also have other benefits like lowering blood pressure, cholesterol, and inflammation, right? I like to highlight apples for a moment. You probably have heard the saying, "An apple a day can keep the doctor away." Well, there was actually a model study that showed prescribing an apple a day could prevent as many deaths from vascular disease on a population scale as prescribing everyone a cholesterol lowering statin drug without the side effects, right? So we talk about giving people statins. I mean, if you're old enough, yeah, at some point your doctor probably talked to you about statin drugs. But what's interesting is that just eating an apple, right? I mean, instead of telling people to eat cholesterol, take statins like candy, that we are, unfortunately in our medical field, we should be telling people to eat apples. And when it comes to apples, make sure you're eating the peel because the quercetin is in the peel. It's richest in the peel. Okay, so you want to make sure you're eating the peel. Don't peel the apple. This is also another really interesting study here. I don't know if you guys are familiar with a syndrome or a very rare genetic disorder called Werner syndrome, where people age very fast. Their cells age very fast. So this is a kind of a picture of someone going from 15 years old, 25, 35, already graying, right, and at 43 looking like an older individual. So they took senescent Werner cells and they exposed them to the amount of quercetin you would get in Whole Foods, right? And the senescent cells were not just cleared, they were revived. Now, I want you to think about this, right? So these zombie cells, these senescent cells, are cleared by your immune system because they're no longer productive members of society, right? Quercetin in this experiment was shown to resurrect these cells and bring them back to life. That's just amazing to me. The power of nutrition, the power of God's nutrition, the medicine He's given us can revive the dead cells in your body. Think about that, man. That's crazy. That's amazing. Um, so apples for sure. We should be eating an apple a day. All right, put that on your in your medicine cabinet. Um, Strawberries. So because of another polyphenol is another thing that I would recommend if you're looking to prolong aging by reducing senescent cell burden. Because I believe it's pronounced fisetin, or if not fisetin, is another polyphenol that is very concentrated. I believe strawberries, according to studies, are the richest source of it, right? And fisetin increased the lifespan of mice at an age roughly equivalent to 75 human years by about 75%. So those are mouse studies, but also there are also human studies that show the benefits of strawberries to improve cognition, lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation. Arthritis is something I've heard a lot, and using strawberries for those who have arthritis. Boost the beneficial gut bug, including one I'm not even going to try to pronounce, but this specific gut bacteria has been linked to longevity specifically, and the studies looking at the gut flora of centenarians. So yes, strawberries is a good choice. So let's kind of summarize. There's one more, but I want to make sure we got this all down. Exercise regularly, making sure that we are including intermittent fasting, apples, and strawberries. There's one other thing we can do to help us clear these zombie cells, and that's one thing I haven't tried yet is long pepper. Piper longumine is another plant chemical found concentrated in a pepper called long pepper. You could find it commonly sold in Indian grocery stores. I don't know if anyone's had this before. It looked really funny to me. I mean, but I like spicy food. I like pepper, so I'm gonna probably gonna start to look for this and maybe add it to my regimen. But if you guys beat me to it, let me know. Really want to know what this thing tastes like. But it is found. I looked it up. It is found in Indian grocery stores. But this right here has been shown to be very effective in clearing senescent cells. All right. So you have your list. Unfortunately, I haven't made. I'll eventually make a list so you guys can look at. I like to give you guys handouts or PDF files so you can review the information. But as we go through this longevity series, we're going to continue providing information on how to slow aging down and giving you information, sorry, materials that you can actually download. So look back to our other lives. We do have a summary sheet of foods that help promote longevity. So make sure you go back and watch those other lives. All right. Um, But otherwise, make sure you're watching every night, every Monday at 7 p.m. We're going to be here talking about how we could prevent, or I should say, slow down aging. Because unfortunately, we all have a day to die. We all have a day that we must expire. But the Bible does say, "Do why should you die before your time?" It is possible to cut your life shorter than even God intended it because of our actions. So I don't know about you. I believe that we do have a big part to play in not only how long we live, but how well those years are lived. All right. So, beloved, I pray above all things that you may prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers. We'll see you next week, Monday.